Hello again, my friends. It's been a pretty big season here of late when it comes to VR headset reviews, and today I'm really happy to finally be reviewing the Vive Pro. HTC reached out to me asking to review their VivePort Infinity service and the Vive Pro. The VivePort Infinity review I've already done, I'll link to that down below, but today it's time for the Vive Pro. And just so you know, my arrangement with HTC was that in exchange for today's video, I get to keep this unit for free. So that was the arrangement I had with them, just so you know that. I do admit I'm a little late to the party with this unit because it's been out for over a year. And with the Vive Cosmos coming out, it might seem a little out of time doing this. However, I do feel like this is still relevant because in my mind, this is the only direct competition with the Valve Index. With some feature set, but especially on price, they're the only two that are even close to each other. The Valve Index full kit retails for $1,000, and the Vive Pro full kit is $1,400. As a result, I'm going to be comparing the two of these directly for the majority of this review. So let's start with what came in the box. The boxes are elegantly numbered inside. You start with the 2.0 lighthouses, followed by the link box. After that is, of course, the headset, and finally, the controllers. I should mention that I did not test the 2.0 lighthouses. That's because with the 1.0 lighthouses that we have set up here, in our tiny one-bedroom apartment, we're not even reaching the maximum area that the 1.0 lighthouses provide. So the even bigger area that the 2.0 lighthouses provide, I wouldn't have seen any difference. It would have been kind of a pointless test. So I didn't try those, but I'm hopeful that in the future, maybe we'll buy a house and have a huge play area. And if or when that happens, I would love to test the 2.0 lighthouse range to see how big a play area we can get. But for now, they're gonna stay in the box, and I hope to test those down the line when I can properly test them in a big play area. So let's start comparing these two in regards to comfort. When I first tried the Valve Index, it was at the time the most comfortable headset I've ever worn right out of the box, without any mods or anything. Now the Vive Pro ties with it for first. It feels great. They've achieved really exceptional balance with this. In the back, there's this massive foam pad that's really huge and much larger than the Valve Index foam pad on the back. The balance they've achieved is phenomenal. Once you get this fitting just right, it feels, I don't want to say weightless because there is weight there, but the balance just feels so good. It's incredibly comfortable. But with one tiny little nitpick, and that is the Vive Pro has the default foam similar to the Vive default foam. And that default foam I find irritates my skin. I get kind of a reaction. It gets red, itchy, and hot, and it's rather unpleasant. And so VR cotton cover comes to the rescue yet again. I need them, they're indispensable. And the original Vive model of the VR cotton cover fits very nicely over the Vive Pro. So that saves the day for me. Whereas the Valve Index doesn't have that default foam. It has an antimicrobial fabric, and that feels fantastic on my skin. I don't need a cotton cover when I'm wearing the Index. So, all of that to say that once I add the cotton cover, the comfort is spectacular. And these two are now tied for first when it comes to overall comfort and just the pleasure of wearing it. I can wear it for hours and hours and hours and it doesn't hurt my head, it doesn't feel tight, doesn't feel heavy. Really happy about that. Another distinguishing comfort feature between the two is that they both have light blockers by your nose. The Vive Pro has a really massive light blocker and the Index has a very small light blocker. And the Vive Pro nose blocker blocks a lot more light than the Valve Index. It's funny because I've grown accustomed to that so that if I need to check an important message, I can look down at the phone through the nose gap to see if I have a message or see what's happening in the room. Because this blocks everything. With that nose gap, there is no light leak at all, and you are totally in VR, which is really awesome, but that was a surprise I did not expect because I got so used to having somewhat of a light leak. I should say for glasses wearers, you do have to do a little bit of a dance putting this on because if you just put it straight on, the nose blockers will just be flaps between your glasses and the lenses. So you have to do kind of a tilt down to get around the nose blocker. That way they will be behind your glasses and not blocking the display you're trying to see. So that's a bit of a dance you have to do, but it's not a huge deal. Now let's move on to one of the most important aspects for a VR headset, and that's the display. Now, first of all, with field of view, the Vive Pro has the same field of view as the original Vive. So with field of view, the Index instantly wins because it has a much wider field of view by default, but also you can bring the lenses so much closer to your eyes to cover more of your vision and to have less of a snorkel vision. Now there is eye relief, just like the original Vive had in the Vive Pro. You push this button on the left and you can move it forward or back. So that's perfect for making room for glasses if you have them, but if you don't have glasses, you can just have it all the way forward. But it doesn't come nearly as close to your eyes as the Index does. So when it comes to field of view, the Index wins hands down. But there is one element of the Vive Pro that wins over the Index. If you recall, during my original Index review, I went from the original Vive to the Index. So I went from an OLED display to an LCD. And I was so used to the Vive display that I was a little surprised by the LCD contrast. Those deep, dark blacks I was used to seeing with an OLED display are a little more gray and washed out in an LCD display. And that's just the nature of the display. That's pretty much nothing you can do about it, and I eventually grew accustomed to it and was happy with it. But now with the Vive Pro, you have the high resolution that's comparable to the Index. I found the resolution pretty similar in my experience. But you get back those deep, dark blacks and that nice contrast. And having that back just feels so nice. Like, if I could somehow take the display in here and put it in the Index, I would want for nothing. That would be phenomenal because, like I said, I did eventually get used to the LCD display and I moved on just fine. But now playing on this after the fact, there's no denying the display is spectacular and looks so much better than the Index. So for all the things that the Valve Index wins over the Vive Pro, there's no denying the display is spectacular. Now, like I said, you have to ignore field of view for a minute because this wins field of view, but based on display alone, it looks great. However, the Vive Pro will then lose again once we talk about audio. The Valve Index audio is spectacular. These speakers that float over your ears sound fantastic, and the microphone is really great too. For all of my Let's Plays, this is my go-to because the microphone is second to none. The microphone on the Vive Pro, to me, sounded the same as the original Vive. And so now to give you a sampling of the two different microphones, here we are in Steam VR Home. This is the Vive Pro microphone. Now, it works just fine when it comes to online chatting or multiplayer games or what have you, but when it comes to Let's Plays and videos, I prefer a little better microphone. And now switching to the Valve Index microphone, I'm sure you can already tell the difference in audio quality here. With the Valve Index and my Let's Plays, I don't need a third-party microphone for good audio quality, which is pretty great. Speaking of audio, I was struggling to get good bass out of the Vive Pro. Now the speakers are pretty good, but I was really lacking the bassy bass that I was used to hearing on my deluxe audio strap for the Vive. After researching online, it turns out I wasn't alone in that, and lots of people have said that it's about the speakers not being nice and flush against your ears. And for me, that was exactly the case. If, while playing, I take my hands and just press the headphones against my ears, it sounds just like what I'm used to with the deluxe audio strap, whereas if I don't do that, I lose a lot of bass. I have seen online there's a 3D printable clip that has rave reviews that will sort of snap the headphones more tight on your ears, but I don't have a 3D printer and so I wasn't able to test that out. But there's other things you can try. You can have a rubber band mod or a bungee cord mod. There are all kinds of cheap ways to make sure these headphones are pressed against your ears. Now that is a slight bummer that you have to mod something like that yourself for such an expensive headset, but at least there are cheap solutions around that. So it would be super nice if it just sounded like the deluxe audio strap out of the box, but seems like for the nice full bass, you gotta do a little bit of creative modding on your end. So that's kind of a bummer. So in all matters audio, with the speakers and microphone, the Valve Index wins, hands down. Now, of course, this review would not be complete without talking about controllers. Now, it's important to mention that the Valve Index controllers can be paired with the Vive Pro, but I'm comparing them because out-of-the-box bundles, buying the Index, you get those controllers, and of course, Vive controllers, buying the Vive Pro bundle. And essentially, the Valve Index controllers win in every category. They're incredibly more comfortable for long-term use. They're future-proofed with future VR experiences with the finger tracking. The controllers just win all around, in my opinion. Now, the Vive Pro does have one more trick up its sleeve. Earlier, I raved about the display, about how I think the display is better than the Index, but the Vive Pro also has the possibility to go wireless, albeit it's a separate purchase. But currently, the Valve Index has no way to go wireless. The Vive Pro, if you purchase the wireless kit, can become a wireless VR system that still works with your PC. It doesn't become the Quest. You still have to be within range of your PC, but you can lose the cord. And that's a pretty slick feature. Now, I need to say that I have not tested this myself. I don't have the wireless kit. I'm fascinated by it, and I would like to test it in the future. But currently, I don't have any direct experience with it. So I'm really curious to try it, but just know that currently, if you pay for the wireless kit, the Vive Pro can become wireless, the Index cannot. So in summary, with the Vive Pro versus the Valve Index, the Index wins in most categories. It wins in field of view, it wins in the controllers, it wins in audio, and it wins in price. Now, the Vive Pro does squeak out 2 wins here. I think the display is better than the Index, as well as it has the potential to go wireless if you purchase the wireless kit. It's a beautiful machine, and I'm absolutely in love with the display. But overall, the Index wins most categories. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the Vive Pro, especially comparing it to the Index. The Index wins most categories for the price, but I still don't want to downplay the display. The display here is second to none, and I wish we could put this display in here. That would be really great. That would be really cool. But as it is, as far as the top tier consumer VR headsets, these are our options, and I hope this has been helpful with you making your decisions. I'm hopeful to try the wireless adapter in the future. I feel like that could be a really fascinating experience. But in the meantime, those are my thoughts on the tethered version of the Vive Pro. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you later. All right, bye. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. See ya.